Thank you. Welcome to the birthplace of Australian Labor. Welcome to Queensland. First today, I would like to acknowledge and respect the traditional owners of the land on which we launched this campaign and elders past, present and emerging. I'm so proud to be welcomed to country shortly by Nunakul Yagara. Friends, now I want you to welcome to the room three great Australians, three great Labor leaders, three great Prime Ministers, Paul Keating, Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard. Another has asked me to read this short message. I regret that I cannot be in Brisbane for today's launch, but I take this opportunity to send my best wishes to Bill and all of our candidates for success on the 18th of May. I have great confidence that Bill Shorten and his talented shadow ministry will be elected to govern in the interests of the people of Australia, based on the solid founding principles of the mighty Australian Labor Party, a party I've had the honour to serve and be a proud member of for 72 years. And it's signed, Bob Hawke. We are joined in Brisbane by so many Labor legends whose service to Queensland and Australia is part of our national story, present and past, and I want you to welcome them here. Former federal Labor leader, Queenslander Bill Hayden. Premier Daniel Andrews, Chief Minister Andrew Barr, and Opposition Leader Peter Malinauskas. Bill Shorten's federal Labor team. The men and women of Australia's mighty union movement. The officials and members of our great Australian Labor Party. Friends, welcome one and all. As Labor people, we know how much is at stake for families on Saturday, May 18. In the next 13 days, this election will be a contest between our movement and their machine. And they are promising 2 more weeks of expensive scare campaigns to come. Friends, just 4 years ago, we still had our own LNP government here in Queensland. They were arrogant and they were out of touch. 14,000 jobs were cut from Queensland services. Nurses, doctors, teachers, paramedics, fireys, cleaners, all sacked. Nursing homes were closed. Hospitals had to do more with less. Billions of dollars worth of asset sales were planned. It has taken us 4 years to rebuild these frontline services in health and education. The LNP doesn't care about us, they care about themselves. We cannot afford 3 more years where these people run Canberra. Look at what they've already done to us already. The federal LNP has cut $316 million from Queensland hospitals. And just this year, we lost $182 million from our schools. That means teachers having to do more with less, and our kids inevitably miss out. Under Scott Morrison, Queensland is not a priority for infrastructure funding. The federal LNP is anti-worker. They ensured Queensland workers relying on penalty rates took a cut in their take-home pay. But do you know what was perhaps the cruelest cut of all? The federal LNP cut $1.6 billion from remote Indigenous housing, ending 50 years of working together. Queensland cannot afford 3 more years of getting the crumbs of federal government spending. Queensland can't afford 3 more years with a chaotic federal LNP propped up by Pauline Hanson and Clive Palmer. And Queensland cannot stand 3 more years of Scott Morrison. Queensland, I need you to vote them out. Because, friends, it doesn't have to be like this. We can have a federal government that fights alongside us to make sure we get our fair share. We can have a federal government that ends the cuts to education and health. We can have a federal government that secures the jobs of today and the long-term secure jobs of our future. We can have a federal government that protects the rights of Queensland workers and their families. We can have a federal government that is a partner for our state. We can have a federal Labor government. And we can have a Prime Minister that is a friend to Queenslanders. We can have Prime Minister Bill Shorten. He's not perfect. He's not a Queenslander. But he's the next best thing. He's married to one. And it's great to welcome Chloe here. Friends, I've known Bill Shorten for more than 30 years. He has dedicated his life to fighting for fairness and to delivering a better deal for people who work. You all remember Bill's dedication to bring his members up to the surface and safe home from the Beaconsfield mine. I met Bill at university. He was as committed then as he is now to the dignity of work, for having a job, a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, and the right to come home safely to your family. I remember sitting with Bill talking to families of children with a disability. Do you know what Bill does? He listens, he cares, and then he leads. Today we have a national disability insurance scheme because of Bill Shorten. I know this for certain. Prime Minister Shorten will be good for our state and he would be good for our nation. Friends, as Labor launches its campaign in Brisbane with 2 weeks to go until election day, I want to speak directly to Queenslanders. You gave me your trust by voting out the Newman government in 2015. My government worked with you to rebuild our frontline services. You renewed that trust in me and rejected the cuts and the chaos of an LNP government propped up by Steve Dixon and One Nation 18 months ago. Together today, we're setting Queensland up for the future, a better future. So trust me now when I tell you this. Queensland is being held back by the federal LNP government. There's no one stronger than a Queenslander, no one more proud. We stand up to cyclones, to bushfires, floods and drought. And now I'm calling on Queensland to stand up for itself against a federal LNP government that's not giving us our fair share. Queensland, vote them out. We need a Prime Minister who comes to Queensland to work with us, not against us. Queensland needs change down in Canberra, not more of the same. Queensland deserves a federal government that is united, stable and ready to govern. Queenslanders want to be part of a nation where the fair go is for everyone, not just the lucky ones. That's what's at stake in 13 days' time. That's why this launch matters so much today. Queensland together, let's vote them out. Now, friends, it's a wonderful privilege to introduce the Nunakal Jagera to welcome us to country.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ashley Rusker and I'm a descendant of the Yagara people. For those who don't know, the Yagara people are the local tribe which occupies the Brisbane region, stretching from the mouth of the Brisbane River all the way out to the Great Dividing Ranges at the foothills of the Warwick and Toowoomba Ranges, back down through to the Caboolture River and as far down south as the Logan River. Within the Yagara tribe there are several different subclans, the Yagara and also the Yugarapul people. These different subclans make up the larger Yagara-speaking language group. And on behalf of the Yagara people, it's my pleasure to come here and give you a welcome to country and extend a warm welcome in saying Yiri Ngamali. Which means you're all welcome to gather here on this land. And may God and all of our ancestors guide us in peace. Thank you.
Now pa wida nare pa puna. Now pa wida je omokan ba na pa wanjeja na mare pa puna. Now pa wida je omokan ba na pa wanjeja na mare pa puna. Yo nanyi Yagara noro. Yo nanyi na malaja. Yo way. Dandare yugora malaja yugora dandare na minjana malarai nongara minjana malarai nongara dandare yugora malaja yugora dandare chai hop. Dandare yugora malaja yugora dandare na minjana malarai nongara dandare yugora malaja yugora dandare chai hop. Dandare yugora malaja yugora dandare na minjana malarai nongara yo. Welcome. We're now dancing about our totem. For those of you who don't know what a totem is a representation of your clan or your family group. This could be a tree or an animal. Ours in the Yagara region is a Sangoana, which we call Maroon. This is Maroon, the Sangoana. Bang na ring at a yapping, Elwamun Jam, Lalabaran, Elwamun Jam, Lalabaran, bang na ring at a yapping, Elwamun Jam, Lalabaran. Hop! By Mengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, na Belengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, Belengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, na Belengna Lamburma, chai chai hop, chai chai, chai 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 chai. Babu nanga nyamane, babu nyalwaya karabum lalamarang, yalwaya karabum lalamarang, babu nanga nyamane, yalwaya karabum lalamarang. Hop! By Mengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, na Belengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, Belengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, na Belengna Lamburma, chai chai hop, chai chai, chai 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 chai, yalamalara. Yakara, Bena ring at a yapping, Albamun Yam, Lalamarang, Yalramun Yam, Lalamarang, Babonang Yamane, Babanjalwa Yakarabum Lalamarang. Hop! By Mengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, na Belengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, Belengna Lamburma, by Mengna Lamburma, na Belengna Lamburma, chai chai hop, chai chai, chai 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 chai. That brings us to our last song and dance we called Yulu Bariba. It's our farewell song and dance. To farewell yous all here today. There's a special word we mention in the song. We say Yue. Yue means sad times now, but we'll see each other again. If not here on earth, then on Birli Da, on God's country. This is Yulu Bariba, our farewell. You're gonna riba malara, Yulu Bariba. You're gonna riba malara, you love riba. You're gonna riba malara, you love riba. You're gonna ribolka, kona molka ja. You're gonna ribolka, kona molka ja. Ha yo way, you're nambale nora. Ha yo way, you're nambale malara. Yo way, you're nambale nora. Yo way, you're nambale malara. You're gonna riba malara, you love riba. You're gonna riba malara, you love riba. You're gonna ribolka, kona molka ja. You're gonna ribolka, kona molka ja. Ha yo way, you're nambale nora. Yo way, you're nambale malara. Yo way, you're nambale nora. Ah, yo way, you're nambale malara. You're gonna riba malara, you love riba. You're gonna riba malara, you love riba. You're gonna ribolka, kona molka ja. You're gonna ribolka, kona molka ja. Hop! Yo way, you're nambale nora. Ha yo way, you're nambale malara. Yo way, you're nambale nora. Ha yo way, you're nambale malara. Ha yo. Hi. Your way. Thank you.
Friends, please stand for the national anthem.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free, with golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair. Beneath our Region's Southern Cross will toil with hearts and hands to make this commonwealth of ours renowned of all the lands. For those who've come across the seas, we've boundless plains to share. With courage let us all combine to advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Thank you, Bianca. That was wonderful. Now, friends, it is an honour to welcome to this stage the Shadow Assistant Minister for Indigenous Affairs and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, a Yawuru man from Broome in Western Australia, the father of reconciliation, Senator Pat Dodson.
My friends, I thank the Durable and Yagara dancers for their inspiring welcome to their country here in Brisbane. On behalf of the Shorten Labor team, I pay my respects to both the Yagara people and the Durable people, their elders past, present and emerging. I'm a Yawuru man from the far reaches of the Kimberley. I come to you today after visiting people in the remote towns of the East Kimberley on the campaign trail. At Fitzroy Crossing, I sat down with the First Nations service managers in the complex areas of women's health, of repatriation of human beings, of community safety, of young people's futures, and the trials of humanising the CDP program. One of the senior women was in a very sombre mood. There had been another youth suicide the night before. She looked out into the distance and quietly said through her tears, "Sometimes I wake up and I go to work, simply hoping that one small child sees this old lady going to work and thinks maybe that they could get a job and become a future role model as well. The future of our kids is what keeps us going. Sometimes it gets too hard and we want to chuck it all in. The only things that keeps me going is the children and hope. The funding is always difficult. The rules are always hard and prolific. And the officials controlling the programs don't listen to them. They are desperate for change, for a change of government. The Howard, Abbott, Turnbull and Morrison regimes has worn them out. Constantly being treated as of no value and incapable of managing one's own affairs is so disrespectful. Today I am standing with you, conscious of the aspirations and dreams you have entrusted to us, the Labor Party. Our pledge is to work with First Nation peoples and allow them to lead us forward together. The Shorten Labor government has plans and commitments to bring back a fair go for all Australians and a fair go for First Nations Australians. Justice can be delivered and must be pursued. We know that government decision-making processes have led to pain, to poverty and powerlessness. First Nations peoples deserve better than this. Like the massive cuts of First Nations programs under Tony Abbott, like dismissing the simple aspiration of a voice as a third chamber, like the cruel penalties of the CDP program causing starvation and hunger for families. Labor will reset this relationship. Our new program will be set with First Nation leadership across the country. We will work with First Nations on the principles of co-design and free, prior and informed consent. A Shorten Labor government is ready, willing and able to step up and work in partnership with First Nation leadership to deliver long overdue justice and equality for First Nations peoples and all Australians, to create a voice to the National Parliament and to deliver constitutional change in our first term, and begin the journey of truth-telling and treaty-making. We will be building together a framework of regional assemblies where First Nation peoples are empowered to make decisions, to identify their priorities and to sponsor place-based solutions and deliver lasting change, recognising the cultural wellbeing drivers from within First Nation communities. Labor under a Shorten government will apply the principles of honour, equality, respect and recognition as we develop our new relationship and approaches to reconciliation through a National Makarrata Commission, local truth-telling programs, a national resting place for the unknown warriors, and justice and compensation for the survivors of the stolen generation. Our Shadow Cabinet, guided by our First Nations Caucus Committee, has identified, targeted and focused initiatives. We'll launch those today that will bring the vision of justice and fairness to the lives of First Nation peoples. In education, we have many new and powerful initiatives that work directly to build bridges for the future of our young people. Our unprecedented investment in Indigenous health will be community designed and delivered even more than before. Our new policies and programs in the environment will help visitors to understand the complex national cultural web that, from which our landscapes arise. It'll be a challenge for us to do all we have set out in our new policies and programs, but we will work to achieve that. We want to be the party of choice for First Nations peoples, and we can become that party. We want to deliver for Australians across the country who yearn for a decent, responsible and committed government. Under Prime Minister Bill Shorten and our team, we will be that. Kalia.
I really want that man to be part of a federal Labor government. Friends, now I want you to hear from the people who work with Bill Shorten every day.
Bill's a very inclusive leader who gets the best out of all the team.
Bill likes to bring differences of views and different opinions together for the discussion, and that contest of ideas and views I think is really productive.
The first time I really noticed Bill was when he was down at Beaconsfield at the mouth of that mine, offering support to the families of the trapped miners. I could see then how much he cared about the people that he was representing.
I met Bill when he was National Secretary of the AWU. He came to see me about some employment issues, about how he could improve a lot of the members that he was representing. He's very passionate about it, very passionate about working people. I've found him the same ever since.
I hope people do know this, but one thing I want to emphasise about Bill is this. He really values strong women and he really values smart women. You see that in how he operates and how he engages with women in his leadership team and in his broader team.
I think Bill and Tanya have delivered real unity again, and what that's allowed us to do is rediscover Labor's culture of frank, respectful debate.
Oh, Tanya's got such passion for policy. She's got such passion for young people. It's a delight to work with her, to hit the ground running in government with an education minister like Tanya. How wonderful would it be?
Penny's such a strong and inspirational leader.
Penny and I have worked with each other since we were teenagers here in Adelaide. She's warm, she's incredibly intelligent and a real inspiration.
I think we work really well together. We get on well. We've got pretty similar values and worldviews, but we've got different life experiences. And I think that together gives us a good overview of the issues before us and a good diverse skill set to really address the challenges that we face.
Well, I'm really proud of our unity and what that's allowed us to put in place some really ambitious progressive policies for Australians to think about in the long term.
Our team works so well together. We get to a good place and we all come at it from different perspectives, and we've dealt with a lot of challenges and opportunities over the last 6 years and done a lot together.
We have put together an ambitious policy agenda and we are putting forward a vision for the nation, and that has taken determination and courage from the whole team, and I think the Australian people deserve a party that's prepared to put a vision in front of them, prepared to put policy in front of them, and not just run a scare campaign.
Authorised by N. Carroll, Australian Labor Party, Canberra.
Yes, Bill really is a man who works so well with strong women and intelligent women. Please welcome to the stage one of the toughest and smartest of Labor women, Senator Penny Wong.
Thank you very much. Well, friends, this election campaign has had some wonderful high points. Last Sunday in Melbourne, when Bill announced our plan to give 3 million pensioners and seniors not just new dental care, but new dignity, was definitely one. And I thought seeing Bill call Morrison a space invader on Friday night was pretty good too. But friends, it is being here today with you which is the great moment. Of course, there have been some pretty bizarre moments as well. That radio interview where Barnaby Joyce, he's the gift, isn't he? That's not in the speech. When he talked about the Queensland Labor government, the Labor government. Anastasia, I reckon you should get him to launch a state campaign. And then we've got Tony Abbott down in Warringah trying to rebrand himself as a champion of climate action. Trying to tell us that the decade-long civil war inside the Liberal Party over climate change is a thing of the past. Well, as Tony might say, nope, nope, nope. And as for what Peter Dutton said about Air France, we won't forget. We won't forget. But I'll tell you what I found even more appalling, what I think was probably the actual low point of a pretty ordinary LNP campaign. It was when Michael McCormack, the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, said he'd be doing a deal with One Nation. And why? Because his values and policies are aligned with those of Pauline Hanson. That's what he said. Well, friends, in any society there will always be an undercurrent of disrespect, weak or strong. At any time there will be groups of haters, small or large. But at this election, we have a major political party seeking to embolden those people and amplify their voice. A Liberal Party and a National Party seeking government, propped up by the preferences of Palmer and clinging on for dear life to One Nation. And at any opportunity, giving a nod and a wink to the extreme right, to senators and candidates so often condemned by their own vile language and their own hateful words. Just this morning, Josh Frydenberg, the Treasurer by the way, he defended those deals by declaring, unless you are in jail, you can run for office. Well, don't you think Australians deserve better than that? Well, the Liberals and the Nationals and their far-right alliance don't care about the diversity and unity we've all worked so hard for here in Australia. They don't cherish the progress we've made, progress I've seen in my own lifetime. And they will compromise it all and they will give it all away for nothing more than a handful of votes in a handful of seats from a handful of haters. And this isn't just something the Conservative parties do, it has become who they are. For all the chaos and division, from Abbott and Joyce through to Morrison and McCormack, what they really have in common is this. They are small men with small ideas. This government has no plan for climate change, no plan for better schools. We know Australians need and deserve higher wages and more secure work, but this government has no clue and no purpose. But I will give them this. They can get it together when they really need to. They can always agree to fight for tax loopholes for their mates. My friends, Labor has a very different plan because we are very different people. More generous, more serious and better prepared, and truly dedicated to that fundamental Australian value that every one of us is equal, no matter who your parents were, no matter where you were born or who you love. Labor is a long way from our opponents on this, and we are side by side with the Australian people. And that is why I believe this election matters so much, and that's why I believe that the team that forms the next government of Australia has so much to do. That's why I'm so proud of what my colleagues have done to make Labor ready to govern again. And that's why I'm so pleased to introduce a few of them to you. Our champion for the environment, a Shadow Minister for 9 years, a Minister for 6, the most passionate supporter of Australia's national estate in the Parliament. Stand up, Tony Burke. Our voice of health, a Shadow Minister for 6 years, a Minister for 3, the woman who helped save Medicare in 2016 and will expand it in 2019, Catherine King. Our advocate in infrastructure, Shadow Minister for 12 years, Minister for 6, a former Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, fighting Tories for a lifetime, my dear friend Albo. And our beating heart on industrial relations, Shadow Minister for 6 years, Minister for 6 more, who has fought to save the weekend every day, Brendan O'Connor. The first Indigenous woman on federal Labor's front bench, Shadow Minister for 3 years, State Minister for 4, who brings so much grace and dignity to our caucus. Thank you, Linda Burney. And the economic architect of our program, Shadow Minister for 7 years, Minister for 6, my friend and the former Labor Treasurer of Australia and the future Labor Treasurer of Australia, Chris Bowen. Friends, we are a united team. We are ready to govern. And friends, we are very, very well led. And leadership is a team sport, and we have a great leadership team. And you are about to see living proof of that. Please welcome my friend, the Deputy Labor Leader and the next Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, Tanya Plibersek.
Well, Penny, we love you. Thank you. I'm so proud that a vote for Labor means you'll be representing Australia to the world. And I'm so proud of every one of the Labor people on stage here today. Stand up again, guys. Come on up, all of you. Friends, these are the faces of the future. A united Labor team brimming with ideas and determination. And we're here together today because we're determined to see a Shorten Labor government. We know Bill's the right person to lead Australia because we've seen what his leadership has done for Labor. When Bill became our leader back in 2013, it was clear what we needed: unity and discipline. We've achieved that because of you, our members and supporters, because of our caucus and our candidates. What Bill has done for Labor, Australians want for our nation: an end to the division and chaos, a plan to bring the country together, to make our economy stronger and our society fairer for everyone. Bringing people together is what Bill Shorten does best, not through slogans and stunts, but through ideas and action. That's the only way for Australia to move past the climate wars, the culture wars, and the red Speedos and the silly hats. That's how Australia will lift wages and create jobs, teach and train the young, care for the sick and the old. We are a great country, but the Labor mission has always been about making our nation even better, more reconciled, more independent, more prosperous, and more equal. And that doesn't happen by accident. You need a plan. Bill and I didn't know each other too well when we became leader and deputy back in 2013, but I think one of the reasons we've become good friends is because we share a belief in the value of good ideas and the virtue of good government. When we talk to each other about the long-term challenges facing the country or the issues of the day, we never just say what our opponents are doing wrong. Firstly, because that would take up all of our time. And secondly, because what matters is what are we going to do about it? What are the real and practical things we can change to ensure that every Australian gets a fair go? Because Bill doesn't want to lead an opposition that profits politically from the problems facing people. He wants to lead a government that fixes those problems. That's why Bill hasn't spent this campaign shearing sheep and bleating about tax. He's been putting forward a plan, a bold and detailed plan. A plan shaped and informed by what Bill has done his whole life, listening to the voices of working people, understanding the challenges they face, and finding a way to help. That's the contrast which has really shone through in the leaders' debates. Scott Morrison talks so much, but he has so little to say. He has no ideas, no solutions, no vision, no courage to act on climate change. His only plan is to keep wages low while giving millionaires and multinationals even bigger tax breaks. This is the guy who spent the last 3 years trying to give billions of dollars to big business and the big banks. And now he wants to give $77 billion to the people on the very highest incomes, but he won't say what he's going to cut to pay for it. There's only one way to end the cuts and end the chaos, and that is vote Labor. We have a real plan for change because more of the same just isn't good enough. If you want to get wages moving, vote Labor. For better hospitals and schools, vote Labor. For real action on climate change, vote Labor. For an economy that works for working people, vote Labor. Whether it's Medicare, opening up our universities to working class kids, superannuation, the National Disability Insurance Scheme, we are always the builders. Scott Morrison and the Liberals go negative because they've got nothing. After 3 weeks of fear and smear, Scott Morrison is a motor mouth running on empty, whereas Bill shows his strength and substance every day. Friends, you know, every question time for 6 years, first Mr Abbott, then Mr Turnbull, now Mr Morrison, have talked about Bill's union background. I don't think they realise how happy it makes him and how proud it makes us. Because I'll tell you what, when it comes to the values and the ideas to guide our nation, I'll take someone who has spent their working life standing up for working people over the failed ad guy every time. And it's now my privilege to introduce someone who knows Bill better than anyone, and who throughout this campaign has won hearts around the country, and who here in Brisbane on Easter Sunday actually caught a child falling out of a tree. Please welcome a proud Queenslander and a dear friend, Chloe Shorten.
must say I never thought that I would be up speaking after three such extraordinary and heroic women. Thank you so much. Good morning, my friends. It's so lovely to be home. Yeah, thank you for your welcome. And to Bill's colleagues, thank you so much for making me feel like I belong to this great Labor movement, and not just as a spouse, but as a woman and a person in my own right. It's so very Labor, thank you. I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on this extraordinary land on which we meet today, past and present, and what an honour it is to be hearing from Senator Pat Dodson, who my little one calls P. Doddy, because he's very cool in our house. Let me say a little bit about the fellow that I love. Caring, smart, funny, gentle. He's a wonderful dad, a terrible dancer, and a very proud bulldog owner. Brisbane is where Bill got to know my elder two children when they were very little. He would take them to parks and to South Bank, to beaches. He would patiently play and listen to them for hours and hours. In our life together, that's what I've seen. I've seen what a great listener Bill is, especially to those without power. He is truly a man for others. And what a strong advocate for people without a platform, without newspapers to speak for them, without lobby groups to represent them. So often I've sat with these marvellous people from this grand party to hear Bill talk about the way the actions and the policies of Labor will support the march of women to equality. Equal pay, better childcare, the prevention of family violence, all issues that are born out of my own experience, my own childhood and my family's. Tanya generously describes me a little bit like Bill's feminist conscience, as though this has nothing to do with it. I can tell you that Bill's unconditional respect for equality for women, in that he is his mother's son. Now, every marriage requires sacrifices. Like when we go on date nights and he will talk to the waiters about their wages. Me going, hi, over here, over here. Like when we take our dog for a walk and he will stop and talk to all the neighbours about climate policy, about mental health policy, about the environment policy. At the show with the kids, he stops and talks to the ride operators about their EBAs. But he lives and breathes this stuff. And through the long days away from home, the very late nights, the early starts, he's driven by a determination to make a difference for those who need it. My friends, I know how much this party means to Bill. I know how much your support means to him. And I know he leads a group of extraordinary people who, with your help, will be a great, great government for this country of ours. Will you please welcome my husband, Bill Shorten?
My fellow Australians, at this election, you have the power to change our country for the better. You have the opportunity to take Australia into a new decade with new vision, with new purpose, and with a new Labor government. I make this promise to my fellow Australians that if you vote Labor, we will put the fair go into action. A pay rise for wage earners, help with the cost of living for families, including cheaper childcare, and at long last, dental care for pensioners covered by our Medicare. If you vote Labor, we will deliver a better deal for the next generation, real investments in education and real action on climate change. If you vote Labor, you can end the chaos in Canberra by electing a strong, stable and united team focused on serving the people of Australia. The choice for you, the choice for our country is clear. It can be more of the same or a change for the better, division and drift or unity and purpose, more cuts to health and education or better schools and hospitals, rising cost of living and stagnant wages, or a better deal for working families. The choice is clear. You can have cowardice and chaos on climate change, or courage and action. This is the choice for every citizen of our great nation. 3 more years of smug, smirking, unfair complacency under the Conservatives, or a bolder, better and more equal future for Australia under a new Labor government. Now, friends, before I go any further, I'd just like to thank my darling wife, Chloe. I love you. And I'm sure that everyone here and across Australia can understand why I am happy to be known as Chloe Shorten's husband. Thank you, Anastasia, for making us welcome, and thank you for so many state and territory Labor leaders for joining us today. And to Tanya and Penny, thank you for your friendship, for your counsel, for your strength. Thank you for being a constant reminder of the difference it makes when a political party has real commitment to equality for women. And I count myself so fortunate to sit in a shadow cabinet with the people on this stage. Smart, dedicated, passionate, and they have a vision for doing the big things for Australia. Thank you very much. Every leader needs a good team, but I've got the best one on offer at this election. I acknowledge also the traditional owners of this land. I pay my respects to elders, past, present and emerging. And I pledge that our Labor government will match these words of respect with action. Earlier today, our Senator Patrick Dodson, the father of reconciliation, the man I hope will be the next Minister for Indigenous Affairs, launched Labor's First Nations policy. Real justice, good jobs and stronger families, healthier communities and better housing, and a voice enshrined on our nation's birth certificate, the Constitution. And friends, on behalf of every true believer, I acknowledge the great P.J. Keating, now, Paul, you mightn't be aware of this, but a few months ago, Peter Dutton said that the big problem with Chris Bowen and with Labor is that we want to deliver Paul Keating's unfinished business. Now, he meant it as an insult. We cannot imagine a greater compliment in Labor. Paul, you're a wonderful source of advice to me and my colleagues, a source of great inspiration to every Labor person. I thank you. And of course, in my very first week that I served in the Australian Parliament, I and all of us had the privilege of hearing Prime Minister Rudd deliver the national apology to the stolen generations. Kevin, that act of leadership, that act of decency, that act of healing wasn't just a great Labor achievement, it was a great national moment. It proved, and you proved, that government at its best can speak to the better angels of the Australian nature. Thank you very much. We will never forget it. Now, friends, I'm a Collingwood supporter, so I've been to some pretty big games. But I do reckon that the loudest roar that I've ever heard in my life was in the Great Hall of the Australian Parliament last year, when thousands of survivors of child abuse cheered the Labor Prime Minister who called that important Royal Commission, Julia Gillard. Julia, you had the humility to listen, the courage to act, and because of you, justice is no longer denied to thousands of our fellow Australians. And today I am proud to announce that we will double the number of caseworkers working in the National Redress Agency to speed up the processing and delivery of long overdue compensation. Everyone in the Labor family would like to leave a legacy. Your legacy is one which is truly splendid. And finally, I'd like to address a bloke who cannot be here today, but I know that he and Blanche are watching on television, the one and only Bob Hawke. Bob, we love you, and in the next 13 days, we are going to do this for you. Thank you, Bob. Friends, today we sharpen the argument. Today we make the choice clear. Today I present the case for change. Our great country needs real change, because more of the same is simply not good enough for Australians. And nowhere is this more clear or more urgent than the economy. Our economy is not working in the interests of working people. After 6 years of Liberal national cuts and trickle-down economics, wages growth is at record lows. 1 million of our fellow Australians want more hours of work but cannot find them. 1 million of our fellow Australians are doing 2 jobs at least just to make ends meet. And our economy is running on empty. The fumes of 0% inflation last quarter. But none of this is by accident. The Minister for Finance said so himself. Low wages are a deliberate feature, he said, of the Liberals' economic plan. The Liberals are the architects of low wages growth and they're proud of it. And after 6 years, these are the consequences. People with less job security. People with less money to spend. People paying more for everything. Living standards flatlining. And we all know what's coming next if the Liberals and Nationals get another 3 years. They want to give $77 billion, the number the Prime Minister refuses to say out aloud. They want to give $77 billion of taxpayer money to the highest tier of income earners in this country. And you just know in your bones that if the Liberals get back in, the Prime Minister's personal passion project, his $80 billion giveaway to big banks and big business, will be back on the table. Now, I do not know the details of any secret deal that my opponent has done with Clive Palmer to lock in his preferences. But I tell you what, no one gets something for nothing from Clive Palmer, and I bet that big tax giveaways for big business will be right in the mix. And friends, here's the thing. Whether you give $77 billion to the richest Australians, or whether you give $80 billion to the biggest companies, this money has to come from somewhere and from someone else. If you take out these tens of billions of dollars, it means more cuts to schools, more cuts to hospitals. And as we've already seen in the most recent budget, it means cuts to the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Now, my opponent keeps saying this is no time to turn back. I say this is not the way forward for Australia. If you want to stop the next round of cuts to your school and your hospital and your community, then on May 18, vote Labor. Now, if we win this election, our priority is not making the very rich even richer. It's getting wages moving again for working people, starting with laws to restore Sunday penalty rates in our first 100 days, a new push for equal pay for women, a better deal for casuals, cracking down on the abuse of 457 visas, cleaning up labour hire, and for the lowest paid Australians, converting the minimum wage into a living wage, because no Australian adult who works full-time should be trapped in poverty. Labor rejects an American-style wages system where working people have to rely on tips just to make ends meet. Now, of course, we will consult. We'll work with the independent umpire. We will respect the capacity of business and the economy to pay. But I know I can deliver a better deal for working people through negotiation and cooperation. I know because I've been doing it for 30 years. I know, you know, and we know that this country works best when we work together, when we strive for a win-win outcome. Indeed, for business, that's what Labor's Australian Investment Guarantee is all about. New analysis out today shows that our extra 20% tax deduction for employers who invest more than $20,000 in new machinery and greater productivity and better equipment, this tax deduction for business, this reward for business to invest, will create up to 77,000 new jobs, and win-win, it will deliver an increase in average wages by up to $1,500. That's what I'm talking about, a win for business, a win for the workers, and a win for the economy as a whole, because more money in the pockets of wage earners means more trade for the shops in the high street, more confidence across the board. That is what we call the win-win. Good for business, good for workers, good for Australia. Friends, today as we make the case for change, I am proud to put youth unemployment on this election agenda, because young people, youth unemployment, it's more than double the national average. It's much higher in many communities. And what a waste. What a waste of hope and human potential. And alongside youth unemployment, I want to put age discrimination on the national political agenda. We want to stand up for older unemployed workers. There is a battle which nearly 100,000 older Australians face when they're longer in periods of unemployment, when they're looking for work, a battle which some older Australians have just surrendered in, been forced to give up. You know who I'm talking about. The older workers who've copped the rough end of economic change. They can't get themselves back in the game, not for lack of effort, but for lack of a chance. I see it at every one of the town hall meetings I've been at. There's always very well dressed, quiet, older people, often clutching in a plastic sleeve their CV. They don't speak up in the middle of the meeting. They come to me at the end of the meeting. You can see it in their eyes. There's a sting of rejection. There's a sense of injustice, this recurring question. Why won't someone give them a chance? How did Australia come to be a country where once you're 55 and 60, you're just wiped? Why is their disinterested job service provider simply shuffling them along to one unsuitable interview after another? This is Labor. We believe that young or old, city or bush, every Australian, regardless of their age, regardless of their postcode, has the right to the dignity of work. That is why today I'm proud to announce that Labor will create a new jobs tax cut. We're going to make it easier for small businesses to create new jobs for people who've been looking for work for more than 3 months, companies with a turnover of under $10 million who take on a new person under the age of 25 or over the age of 55, or a parent or carer just trying to get their foot back into the workplace. Under a Labor government, small businesses up to $10 million were able to claim an additional 30% tax deduction on the salary for up to 5 employees. We're going to keep faith. Our new jobs tax cut is an investment in the potential of our young. It's an investment in the experience of older Australians. It's an investment in participation for parents and carers. I will keep the promise I've given at 80 town hall meetings to those older workers, to the young people in rural Australia. Labor's got your back. This is fair go economics at its very finest. when Labor understands that when we extend opportunity to any Australian, the benefits are shared by every Australian. So whether it's secure jobs or decent wages, if you want a better deal at work, do not vote for more of the same. Do not vote for a Prime Minister who voted 8 times to cut your penalty rates. Vote instead for the Labor Party that spent 125 years championing fair pay for working people in this country. And if youth unemployment or discrimination against older Australians means something to you or has touched someone in your world, then vote for the only party with a plan to help. And if you're sick of the uncertainty of living shift to shift, payday to payday, waiting for a text message each night to see if you're working the next morning, if you want more security than that, more dignity than that, more respect than that, more opportunity than that, vote Labor on May the 18th. Changing Australia for the better means helping families with their cost of living. Private health insurance is becoming a luxury, so we're going to cap the premium increases at no greater than 2% for each of our first 2 years while we make the system fairer. Electricity bills, well, they're out of control. So we're going to fill the void and the 13 energy policies of failure of this government, and we're going to get more renewables into the mix to get prices down. And for so many families, paying childcare is now a full-time job. If we want to be a fair and productive and modern nation, then we can't continue with this ridiculous situation where women in particular are spending their whole salary on the very childcare that enables them to go to work. Our plan will deliver better subsidies and cheaper childcare for every family who earns under $174,000. A million families. Families who earn more than that, they won't be worse off. But nearly 1 million Australian households will be up to $2,100 better off per year per child. And if your household income is under $70,000, your childcare will be as good as free. And we'll make childcare cheaper for families, but we're also going to deliver an overdue professional pay rise for our early childhood educators. We're not going to leave it to the invisible hand of the market or pass the cost on to parents. It is time our country gave more respect and fair reward to those early childhood educators to whom we entrust our children to give them the best start in life. And what we're going to make sure is that any opportunistic providers who try and raise their fees on the back of this good news, well, we've got some advice for them. A Labor government will look at every option to keep the costs of childcare rises down, including price control. So the choice for working families is crystal clear. If you want cheaper childcare, if you want real help with your cost of living, vote for a Labor government on May the 18th. Friends, our opponents want to enter Australians in a race to the bottom in pay and conditions. But many of us know that there's nothing for our country on the low road of low-skill work for low wages. There's no dignity or hope or security for our people down that path. There's no marvellous economic opportunity either. There will always be countries with bigger populations prepared to pay people less to make stuff cheaply. We cannot win that race, nor should we be in it. The future that I see for Australia is the high road. High-skilled jobs, high productivity, growing the economy by investing in people and building our nation. Here's some numbers to think about. 150,000 apprenticeships and training places have been lost under the Liberals in the last 6 years. We are going to bring them back for Australians of all ages. We're going to have new carers for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, new knowledge for the digital economy, and new skilled workers in the clean energy technology industries of the future. Our exciting plan for 50% renewables means less pollution and lower power prices, but will also bring tens of thousands of high-quality new jobs here to Australia. And we're going to build new infrastructure, from the beef roads of Western Queensland to Cross River Rail in Brisbane, Basslink 2 in Tassie, Metronet in Perth, the Melbourne Metro, the South Road in South Australia, upgrading the Bruce and the M1 and the Ipswich motorway, the tourism roads in Kakadu, so many more projects and tens of thousands of new affordable social houses for our people. We are going to invest in new industries, hydrogen in Gladstone, battery manufacturing across the nation, shipbuilding for our defence and merchant marine. We will back things that Australia does best in the world, from farming and mining to advanced manufacturing, science and tourism. And we will deliver strong budget surpluses to pay down the debt that these delinquent Liberals have doubled since they've been in office. We can achieve this plan for growth, this investment in people and infrastructure, because we've made the responsible reform decisions for the long term. We will end the intergenerational unfairness in our tax system that puts property investors ahead of first home buyers. We are not going to keep sending tax cheques worth $6 billion a year to people who are not paying income tax. And the days of Australia being treated as a doormat by tax-avoiding multinationals ends on May the 18th if we are elected. Today, I announce a new reform that will prevent big corporations using dodgy royalties to avoid paying tax in Australia, returning over $2 billion to the bottom line of the Australian balance sheet. Our economic plan is not about handouts for the top end and everyone else going back. Our plan is about building and growing and diversifying the economy from the ground up, from the regions to the cities, making it work in the interests of everyone. And of course, for any Labor government, our vision always begins with education. The world and the region that we live in is changing more rapidly than any time in human history. So much is different, so much is uncertain. But one truth is guaranteed. The best investment that we can make is in the potential of our individuals, and the future of our economy is education. Now, my mum was a teacher. She was raised in a Labor household. She knew the Whitlam words: liberate the talents and uplift the horizons of the Australian people. That is what education does. Liberate the talents and uplift the horizons of the Australian people. And this great national mission begins in the early years. 90% of a child's brain develops by the age of 5. Every expert, every smart country, every parent knows this. This is why, for 15 hours a week, 40 weeks a year, a Labor government will deliver universal preschool and kindergarten for every 3-year-old and every 4-year-old in Australia. Imagine the benefit. Every 3-year-old, every 4-year-old, the best start in life for the next generation. That's what makes every parent get up in the morning and work as hard as they do. And every government should work as hard as every parent to deliver the best for their children. That is why we will put back every single one of the $14 billion that the Liberals have cut from our Australian public schools. We know individual attention from great teachers is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Proper help for the kids with special needs. It's a national responsibility, not to be left to parents to feel isolated just to get attention for the child they love. We know that languages, arts and drama, music and sport and camps should not depend upon the personal generosity or the fundraising ability of parents and teachers and cake stalls. A cake stall is not an education strategy. Putting $14 billion back, my word, that's the plan for education. We are going to put free back into free education in this country. And when you think about the importance of change in education and proper funding, it's not only important, my word, it's urgent. 9 out of 10 new jobs created in the next 5 years will require either a university degree or a TAFE qualification. So instead of pushing up the price of degrees, Labor will uncap places and open the doors of university to another 200,000 Australians from the bush, the suburbs and the working class families. And I say to those working in our great public TAFE system, help is on the way on May the 18th. After years of cuts, years of neglect, we are going to rebuild public TAFE in every sense of the word. $200 million to upgrade the TAFEs, 100,000 places where we pay the upfront fees. TAFE is in our Labor DNA and it is at the heart of our plans for Australia's future. I want your kids to be able to get an apprenticeship, and if you want to retrain, I want you to get that chance at a public TAFE. This is the compelling case for change on May the 18th. If you want opportunities instead of cuts, if you want investment instead of neglect, if you want an education system that liberates the talents of every Australian and uplifts our horizons, there's a very straightforward way you can make this happen. Vote Labor on May the 18th. Friends, I think it is fair to say sometimes that we can overcomplicate politics, because in the end, what really matters most to Australian families is straightforward. If your family's okay, if your health's okay, then everything else flows from that. But if that is in jeopardy, everything else is difficult. So when you look at this election, one of the biggest differences and the sharpest contrasts is in health, is in hospitals, is in Medicare. Anyone who's rushed their child to a hospital in the middle of the night knows Australia has some of the best healthcare workers in the world. But years of Liberal cuts, not keeping their promises, forcing public hospitals to do more and more with less and less, they take their toll. Put bluntly, our emergency departments, despite the best efforts of the staff, are overcrowded and underfunded. They're not as safe as they should be. 1 in 3 patients with an urgent condition doesn't get seen within the recommended time. Now, there's no complicated problem here. It's a simple question of dollars and resources. The federal government has cut the money to the states and is starving the system of resources. So today, I announce as part of our $2.8 billion Better Hospitals Fund that we will put $500 million to upgrade emergency departments to bring down waiting times right across Australia. Now, when we talk of medical emergencies, we think of the wailing sirens and the urgent operations. But there is also a medical emergency, an epidemic tearing through suburbs and the bush. It's parents giving eulogies for their children. It's young schoolmates going to the funerals of their friends who they had no idea that they were doing it tough. It's communities hollowed out by grief. Now, we've made progress in shrugging off the stigma of mental health in this community. But the system is still too fragmented. It's still too hard to access. Too many young people are still falling through the cracks. Australia has to change this. So to start our investment in the next wave of mental health support, and I acknowledge the presence of Australian of the Year, Professor Pat McGorry here, Labor will put in $197 million to trial 4 new Headspace Plus centres, meaning more resources, more community-based healthcare for young people in Brisbane and Sydney and Melbourne and Tassie, and as those trials work, we'll roll them out further. Now, if you managed to watch the Sky debate on Friday night, there was one lady asked a question there, and she was asked about the need of diversity for service providers. I told her I was listening to her then, and I just say to her now, I get it, Labor gets it. She asked about Kids Helpline. As a first step, we will invest $6 million in Kids Helpline to ensure young people can call a counsellor for help 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, all of us who've participated in elections often hear from the pensioners, the mighty army of 2.6 million aged pensioners, the people on the Commonwealth Health Seniors Card, and they sometimes feel forgotten as their fixed income is being undermined by the cost of healthcare going up and up. Quite often, when the ads stop rolling and the polls close, it is the pensioners of Australia who are left asking, what about us? Well, not this time, friends. This time Labor hears you loud and clearly. This time we are offering a generational change in Medicare for the pensioners. We are going to make sure that 3 million Australian pensioners and seniors can get overdue help looking after their teeth for the rest of their life. Pensioner Dental. No more waiting in queues, no more putting off your teeth health because you can't afford it, the help you need when you need it. The legendary Bill Hayden is here today, a founding father of universal health care in this country. He knows better than anyone. It was the current generation of pensioners were the workers of Australia 35 years ago who gave up wage rises to help create Medicare. So this dental care for pensioners, the next step, because of the reforms we're making, is a small way of repaying the great debt we owe that proud generation who gave us Medicare to begin with. Friends, no matter where you live, no matter what you earn, we are going to make sure that Medicare is there when you most need it. It is a shocking statistic that 1 in 2 Australians will be diagnosed with cancer across their lifetime. The odds are that if it is not us, it is someone that we love. the more shocking number is that the most reliable predictor of whether or not you will die from cancer is not actually your general health. It is not even your family history. It is your income. Now, we've got a special guest here. Kristen Larson's here. She is a star. She was diagnosed with ovarian cancer at 21. She's been battling it for 6 years with the help of her fabulous sister and family and helping others along the way. She knows the financial burden of cancer treatment. In those oncology day wards, you get to talk to a lot of people. She knows people who have not been able to afford to pay for treatment. Kristen summed it up for me at the day oncology ward at the Royal Brisbane Hospital. She said, when you're fighting for your life, money is the last thing that you should have to worry about. Kristen, you being here reminds me of what's important. You remind all of us what's at stake, why we do this, why we seek office. You and your fight and your family matters to us. Every one of 145,000 people diagnosed with cancer this year matters to us. Every one of nearly 500,000 people having treatment for cancer matters to Labor. So if we form a government on May the 18th, we will make sure there is an additional 6 million cancer scans and tests, 3 million more appointments to specialist oncologists, all covered by Medicare. Cancer makes you sick, but in a rich country like ours, it should not make you poor. And that's what we are going to change in this country on May the 18th. Now, I know that politics is a contested business. I understand neither side wants to give the other an inch at an election time. But I was a bit surprised and disappointed, even by this government's standards, that when I announced our cancer plan, I deliberately left the door open for bipartisan support. The Prime Minister didn't even pretend to give it 10 minutes thought before he sneered that on one hand it wasn't necessary because the treatments people need are already free, and on the other hand he's argued that our plan would cost more than we said. This is what is sick about the political debate in Australia. This is what is broken inside the government. Whenever this current business-as-usual, threadbare policy mob are confronted with a new idea, a good policy, a clear plan, they always look for an excuse to say no. How often throughout this campaign have you heard the Liberals and Nationals say about Labor's plans, our initiatives for everyday Australians? They say Australia can't afford that. They say it while they give multinationals a free ride. They say that while they subsidise property investors to make a loss on their sixth house. They say that while they send tax refund cheques to people who didn't pay income tax. And they say it while working behind the scenes to spend tens of billions of dollars of tax cuts on the top end of town. You can only not afford a plan to help people with cancer treatment if you're spending it on other matters. This election's about choices. So please, before you vote, understand this. Every time you hear the Liberals say Australia can't afford it, what they really mean is you don't deserve it. They say Australia can't afford it. They mean you don't deserve it. But by contrast, my goodness, I'm proud to lead a team that believes Australians deserve the best. The best in everything from defence and national security to our social safety net. And when it comes to health, if you want shorter waiting times in emergency and in surgery, more hospital beds and more nurses, dental for pensioners, and new help in the fight against cancer, if these things make sense to you, if they matter more to you than protecting loopholes for the rich and taxpayer-funded welfare for the wealthy, if you think that your family's health is more important than a multinational company's tax avoidance strategies, then your decision on May the 18th is very easy indeed. Vote for a Labor government to put the health of Australians ahead of the tax rorts at the top end of town. Let me cast your mind back to the 2016 election. Malcolm Turnbull, a name you will only hear at a Labor event, promised the government stable government. But then he was taken hostage by the right wing of the party, his party. At this election, Scott Morrison cannot promise you stable government because he's already taken himself hostage by Pauline Hanson and Clive Palmer. 3 more years of this coalition of chaos would mean more years of delay and denial on climate change. On Friday night's debate, the other fellow, having spent his every day in the job arguing that pollution was going down, the Prime Minister was finally forced to admit that under the Liberals, pollution is going up. Yet he still has no plan to do anything about it. A decade of broken politics proves that half the Liberal and National Party simply don't believe climate change is real, and the other half just don't care when push comes to shove. I don't know which is worse, but I do know that Australia deserves better. In the next 13 days, our opponents and their vested interests will throw everything at us on this issue, find every excuse not to act on climate change. But I promise Australians, and I promise all of those Australians who want action on climate change, and I promise the young people in particular, but all Australians, Labor will stand its ground. No retreat on real action on climate change. We will stand our ground. We will fight hard. We will defy the pseudoscience and the scare campaigns. If we have the privilege to serve as the next government of Australia, I will not bring lumps of coal to Parliament for a laugh while temperatures soar and bushfires rage and flood and drought batter our land. We will not tell our children that politics was too difficult or the future was too hard. We will not say that we knew what was needed to be done, but we lacked the courage and the conviction to do it. We will build a renewable energy future for this country. We will cut pollution. We will help industry modernise. We will empower our farmers. We will rescue our rivers. We will save the reef and protect our precious environment. We will not run nor hide from the problem. We'll get on and do something about it. And on this issue, perhaps above all others, the contrast and the case for change is night and day, black and white. If you want to see real action on climate change, you need to vote for a Labor government. Friends, in our time in opposition, we have united around a bold and comprehensive vision for the nation. And the case for change, our case for change, rests on the great things that we're determined to do and achieve for our country's future. Everything from equality for women to getting the NDIS back on track. Our agenda is ambitious. It aims high. It aims as high as the people of Australia aim high for themselves. We are choosing hope over fear. We are choosing the future over the past. We are choosing a real plan over petulant name-calling and empty scare campaigns, because we won't accept second best for Australia. We won't impose second-rate options on this nation. We do not want second prize for the Australian people. And in the 13 days remaining, the choice for our country and our message to the people is as vital and as simple as this. If you want better hospitals and schools, not more cuts, vote Labor. If you want unity and stability, not 3 more years of chaos, vote Labor. And if you want to tackle the cost of living and get wages moving, not more tax loopholes for the well-off and the wealthy, vote Labor. If you want real action on climate change, not more chaos and denial, vote Labor. So today, this is our case for change. We say proudly to all Australians, end the chaos, vote Labor. Vote for real change, vote Labor. Vote for your family's interests, vote Labor. Vote for your future, vote Labor. And for a fair go for all Australians, wherever they live, however much they have, vote Labor. Thank you very much.